You know, I like to think I'm a pretty good therapist, right? I think I'm above average. And there are therapists who are better than me, and there are therapists who are worse than me. But over the last 2 years, what's been fascinating to see who is adapted to this new telehealth world that we're living in, right? As we go into 2.5 years into this global pandemic, right? Some people are still fighting the idea of telehealth, right? And those of us who specialize or see kids from all over, we're a little bit more, I think, adaptive to this worldview. I mean, and listen, the ability for me to run my therapy practice was like 90,000th on the list of important things during the last 2.5 years of COVID. But it just shows you that you might be smarter than me. You might be a better therapist than me. You might even be a better business person than me. But if I was more adaptive to this new modality, I have an advantage that perhaps you don't. Gifted kids, they're so used to their intelligence knocking doors open for them. If that thing doesn't open a door, they can get stuck because they don't really have that second gear. It's our job as the adults who support the kids, and frankly, as business owners and teachers and leaders, to support our students, clients, customers, employees to develop those skills, right? If the only thing you've got, once again, if the only thing you've had is a hammer, everything's a nail. So gifted kids and neurodiverse individuals in general tend to struggle in this area because of the differences in the neurodiverse brain. So the amygdala is the seat of our fight or flight emotions in our brain that is highly connected with our hippocampus, which is our memory system, and our limbic system, which is our center of emotionality. What that means is that we are more likely to feel feelings that are bigger feelings that last longer. When we feel big feelings, we're more dysregulated and less likely to be able to tap into our good coping skills, which live in our cerebral cortex. So if we can't tap into those skills, we go to our fight or flight stuff, which is more in our lizard brain, in the back of our head. That's like run away, scream at them, freeze. And I'm not frozen because she's still moving. So it's okay, right? One of the things we know about the gifted brain is our kids are slower to develop executive functioning skills, right? Being the prefrontal cortex comes online slower in the neurodiverse brain. I was actually talking about this with my wife earlier today. And then there's so much energy that goes into developing the thinking part of the brain, the cerebral cortex, that other parts of the brain develop a little bit slower. We call this asynchronous development. And this is important because a neurotypical 10-year-old or a neurotypical 42-year-old is 42 or 10 in basically all things, right? Chronologically, intellectually, emotionally, socially, and physically. They're about that age, their chronological age. A neurodiverse individual develops asynchronously. So you might be 10 years old, have the cognitive capacity of a 15-year-old, the social skills of an 8-year-old, the emotional skills of a 7-year-old, and the physical skills of an 11-year-old. How do you accommodate that kid? Right? And we're seeing this more and more in the business world too, right? People who are 35 enter the workplace who have the intellectual and professional skills of a 50-year-old master, but the social skills of a freshman in college, right? How do you accommodate that person on corporate retreats and in planning meetings and in feedback sessions? I mean, handled incorrectly, neurodiverse people can be an HR nightmare, just like they can be a programmatic nightmare in schools. That's where these sort of educational things, this is why the work those of us in the neurodivergent community do is so important. Gifted people, neurodiverse people are very intense, big feelings, big thoughts, big emotions, big verbalization. My colleague, Josh Shane, I always quote him on this. He says that gifted people will get their feelings hurt when most people wouldn't even have feelings. I think that is very much this population. And then the ones we talked about before, the idea of the identity becoming fused with that of being gifted. And ultimately, if we're not careful, everybody walks around with their own blinders on. If you only see the things you want to see, you're only going to get the narrative that you want to get. Our brains are inherently lazy. As a little exercise, next time you're driving down the road, and if you're listening to this in your Bluetooth in your car, do it now. If you're hungry, think about what you see when you're driving down the road. I guarantee you're going to see more restaurants. right? Not that more restaurants are there. It's not like we're dropping them in. This isn't the Truman Show, right? It's just that your brain likes to be right. I'm hungry. I wonder if there's something to eat. Restaurant, 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 restaurant. You know, if someone tells you, I think there are more blue cars on the road these days, they're going to go out there and go see more blue cars, right? Or if you're like, there's no way that's true, you're not going to see those blue cars. Our brains are lazy and they like to be right. So it means that we are fighting a sizable reflexive kickback against our own thoughts sometimes because we don't want to be wrong. You know, if you're a gifted kid and you think Thomas Jefferson is the greatest US president, but somebody lays out a really good argument that it's Barack Obama, your brain might go, those are good points, I should listen to that. But it's much more likely that your brain is going to go, no! You know, we have to engage with alternate perspectives with intention. Intention, by the way, is one of the biggest pieces of cognitive flexibility that we want to talk about. So I have this picture here, the ball thing. So when I'm in session with clients, I will, if I'm in person, I will throw something back and forth with them. Because we're not doing that, right? Tanya, will you help me out with this? Okay, so I'm gonna dive my invisible ball here. I'm gonna throw it to you. All right, ready?
Yeah.
Throwing
okay.
it. Catch it. Very good. Throw it back to me. Caught it. All right, I'm gonna throw it back to you. Very good. Throw it back to me. Ow! Oh my nose!
Oh no!
Oh no! Tanya just broke my nose with the invisible ball. Invisible bloods everywhere. It's a whole thing, right? And you know, this always gets a laugh, right? And an eye roll from my teens. They're like, "Oh, okay. You're bringing big dad energy right now, Dr. Matt." I'm like, yes. See, one of the things is that Tanya wasn't trying to break my nose, right? Trust me, if she was trying to break my nose, she would have done it already. This is a big target, America, right? It's a big, and Canada, sorry. And the thing is, once we do something, once we choose to act, and that can be saying something, thinking something, doing something, we lose control over how it is perceived by others.
Yeah.
You know, and then what that happens, we get defensive about that. I didn't mean to break your nose with a ball, Dr. Matt. Well, of course you didn't. It doesn't unbreak my nose though. Right? My nose is still broken. So remember I said before, it's about holding two thoughts in your head at the same time. Mm-hmm. I didn't mean to, and the impact was still bad. Yeah. I tell my kids all the time, we'd be having a very different conversation if I thought you were trying to break my nose. Mm-hmm. Right? And that becomes a huge thing. You know, every so often when I teach, you know, I'll catch somebody on their phone, and it's so amazing to me because it's a difference between like, I'm bored in this lecture, I'm flipping through Facebook, and I'm trying to talk to the babysitter right now because, oh my goodness, there's something going on at home. Now, if I'm not careful, the impact of both of those things is the same. But if I can connect the impact to their intention, it feels different. I allow myself to feel different because one of them feels a little bit more disrespectful than the other, right? But if you're telling me there's a problem at home and your kids are having trouble, I immediately step into empathy mode. I'm like, what can I do to help you? Right? Fill in the gaps, tell the story, because in the absence of alternate information, our brains create our own narrative, and we will fill in the intention for you if you're not careful, right? You didn't say hi to me in the hallway. It's because you hate me, as opposed to I just didn't see you, right? Especially in this day of AirPods, right? Like now you can't even see if people are listening to music or something. Like, you know, I miss the days where you had the big long white string, right? It's like very clear. So all of this leads to a major impact on relationships. You know, being right takes on this heightened importance if you're a gifted kid, right? But what ends up happening is there are very few absolute binaries, lots of exceptions, lots of nuance, lots of shades of gray, hence the title of the talk, right? And the calmer our brains are, the easier it is to appreciate and understand that. Asking a calm person about a complicated topic will get you much better and more nuanced answers. If you ask that same person who is stressed out and overwhelmed, what do you think about this? You're going to get a much more black and white answer. Our brains just don't have the space, don't have the spoons to give a lot of complexity when we're stressed out. Problem is, since our gifted kids have big feeling, big intensity brains, they're often very stressed out. So we need to help our kids be calm or co-regulated to engage in this kind of nuanced thinking, right? And we all fall victim to this, the idea of what we call the fundamental attribution error. When seeing someone act, we tend to look at the power of personality over environment. And it's the sort of thing I often tell this story. I was giving a talk at the Georgia Gifted Conference earlier this year. Gave a great couple of talks. It was awesome. Really made some wonderful connections. Had a great conference. Then I drove from Athens back to Atlanta to have dinner with my friend and his kids. And then I was driving from their house to the airport and got stuck in terrible Atlanta traffic. Like, oh my goodness, terrible Atlanta traffic. Right. So I'm running late. I've got to drop off the rental car. I've got to get on my flight back to New York. Right. I'm sweating bullets. And as I'm dropping off the car and taking the shuttle back to the airport, I run into somebody from the conference and they're like, hey, Dr. Ma. Right. Because they experienced my personality in an environment before that was like, yay, I feel really good. This is awesome. But now when I'm super stressed out because I'm in a different environment, I'm like, oh, it's great to see you. Let's connect on LinkedIn. Right. Yeah. So because they knew me, they could understand that there was a difference of things going on. Right.
Yeah.
If we don't teach kids that intentionally, they're going to default to they're in a bad mood because they have a bad personality, not they're in a bad mood because something is happening.
Right.
Something is happening naturally breeds empathy. So, I like this book, How to Be a Supervillain. It's a great way to introduce some of these concepts, right? So you've done something and you've made your student angry or your client angry or your child angry and they big mad. It's a big mad right now, right? And they're saying, you did this on purpose, boss/mom/teacher. So what we do in this situation is we interject other perspectives. We do what we call first thought, second thought. So your first thought, Johnny, was that I did this on purpose. You wanted to go to the concert. I told you no because we have a family event tomorrow morning. You're doing this because you're trying to ruin my life. That is a possibility. That is a non-zero chance that's the case. What's another possibility, Johnny? You hate me. Another possibility. It's a non-zero chance. What's another one? I don't know. You hate the chain smokers. You hate music. Totally possible. I might be from the town from Footloose. I don't know. Right. And as we go through this, what ends up happening is sooner or later your kid runs out of concrete things that's angry and hurt. And then they either run out of things or they start coming up with things that are ridiculous. You're a pod person. Every time I do this exercise, someone calls me a pod person. Do I look like a pod person? I don't feel like I look like a pod person. No. I mean, like, yes, very much generic white guy, right? Like with the beard and the collared shirt. Like, sure, I'll own that, right? But I don't think I'm a pod person, And that's when you've got them, right? Because it's like, yes, clearly I've been replaced by a robot, right? Or, maybe I'm a ghost, or maybe I'm, right? The idea is if you know that I wasn't trying to hurt your feelings, because that's a thing I'm never trying to do. And you know that I did that anyway. I understand that is the impact of the choice I made. If both things are true, what does that tell you about the choice I made? And this is such a powerful lesson for kids because sitting in the big chair, whether it's because you're a parent, a teacher, an administrator, an owner, a manager, a boss, whatever that is, we have to make choices that bother people sometimes. And that's the gig. That's what we signed up for. And that's tough. And so I tell my people, whoever I'm talking to, is like, listen, if I'm telling you to do something that's making you upset, knowing it's going to make you upset and knowing that I'm making my life harder by doing so, I must have a pretty damn good reason, right? So I don't want you to go to the Chainsmokers concert, not because I don't love music or don't want you to have a good time with your friends. We need to be up at 6 a.m. tomorrow. And if you don't get back till 1 from the concert, you're going to be a mess tomorrow. I need you at your best. You don't have to like this choice, but I hope you understand that I'm making it knowing this outcome because I have a different set of priorities that feels more important to me right now. It humanizes our other perspectives and moves us away from the classic, you don't get it. You don't remember what it was like to be my age. It's like, I trust me, I do. And that is applicable to work, school, home, therapy.
Yeah.
So perspectives can be wonderful. They can also lead us astray. Like, if this is the thing, this is the magical answer, right? This is the golden bullet that really saves everything. But sometimes it really just sort of creates a separate set of problems. So to develop perspective taking, first thing we do is we seek to understand. A natural state is to seek our own personal goals. Now, that's human. That doesn't make you a sociopath. It's just, that's human, right?
Yeah.
So the second thing is we mindfully set aside our own goals, right? You wanted to start at 8 o'clock. I want to start at 8:15. You said yes to me by putting aside your own goals. Then we ideate, right? We think intentionally about how other people are perceiving the world. In this step, we imagine several possibilities. We do this until we're ready to make a hypothesis, right? You have an extra ticket to the basketball game. You invite your friend says, I wouldn't want to do that. And your brain goes to, they must hate me. But then if we ideate on it, okay, what are the other possible possibilities out there? Maybe they don't like basketball. Maybe they have a family event. Maybe they have religious services that night. Maybe they're scared of arenas. Maybe blah, 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 blah. Once we have some ideas, then we think about what's our best guess. If our hypothesis is correct, what outcomes would we expect? If our hypothesis is wrong, how might we know? You might default to, Sally doesn't want to go to the basketball game with me because she hates me, right? But if Sally looks upset that she can't go, maybe my hypothesis was wrong. Maybe Sally would really like to go, but she has a family event she can't get out of, right? It gives us the space to opt into other explanations. And then we observe and adjust. This is, if you take nothing else away from this talk, and I hope you take lots, observe and adjust are the two best action words you can do when it comes to perspective taking. Watch others and adjust our behavior based on the data we get. So lots of exercises this, and these work in all things. We're going to walk through them relatively quickly because, I want to value your time, and you're probably listening to this in your commute or something like that. Would I Rather is a great game. Would I Rather is all about perspective, right? So, would I rather eat at Wendy's forever or Taco Bell forever? Now I'm going to have my answer in my head, but I'm going to have everybody in the room guess what my answer is. Now you're going to default to what your answer is, right? You're like, oh, I'm a Wendy's person, so I think it's Wendy's, but that's fine. But you're trying to guess what I think.
Okay.
Right? I'm not taking a survey. I'm having you guys do a little mind read, right? Based on what you know about me, what do you think my answer is?
Wendy's.
Wendy's. Well, yes. I mean, like, obviously, hello. Come on, people. Right. But what's interesting is that then the room goes, oh, what did I learn? And what do I have in common? Like, the people who think it's Taco Bell probably have reasons for thinking it's Taco Bell, right? And they can share those thoughts. The idea is that it's not about right and wrong. It's about where did your thoughts come from, and then you repeat this as you repeat. You can play this game for 30 seconds, 30 minutes, or 30 hours. And your questions can be light or serious. One of the things I do is I'm a sex educator. Would I Rather is a great game for sex ed because you puts people in situations to think about hypotheticals, right? And I would much rather have my kids think about a hypothetical in this classroom that is safe than when things are getting hot and heavy. And it's like, you haven't thought about this yet, so let's think about it now, right? It gives your brain a test run. This is the foundation of empathy. Another game is the alphabet challenge. As I'm sure all of us know, is our various levels of adulthood, that icebreaker games and corporate retreats can be absolute death. This is one that's actually not so bad. Right, ABC, A through Z on one side of a piece of paper, then pick any sentence or phrase and match those letters down. So you're going to get couplets, AI, BA, CM, DT, da, 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 da. And then you go through balderdash style, right? Everybody writes a name of a person that exists that has those initials. So I wrote Allen Iverson, Barry Allen, Chris Maloney. Go through and everybody shares those. And like I said, balderdash rules. If you have a unique one, you get a point. right? But what it does is like if 17 people in the room all pick Barry Allen, they all go like, wait, you like the Flash too? And then you're in, right? It's instant perspective taking. And then no points for repeated answers or false ones, looking at you, universe, right? You know, oh yeah, like Derek Tuscaranzi is a professional badminton player from Uruguay. No, he is not. I've got Google on my phone, you know.
Is
sorry,
Google allowed? Are you allowed to Google?
Google is not allowed, only if I'm running the event. Because I'm telling you, there's a lot of media out there these days, and kids will be like, no, this is only a character from this obscure Cartoon Network show that you've never heard of that aired in 2007 that only exists on YouTube. That's like, but I was alive in 2007 and watching a lot of Cartoon Network in 2007. So I call bluff on you, sir. Right. Back-to-back drawing is another one. You know, the nice thing with this, you can do this two kids, you can do it with 18 kids and just put them in a big circle so they can't see each other. The idea is they can't look at each other or talk to each other. And you give them something concrete to draw: a house, a boat, a mountain, a snowman. I like to start with snowman because it's sort of like an iconic image. But even things that feel iconic and repeatable show up differently. And it's not even about art skill, right? Because people say, I can't draw, or he's a really good drawer, or she's a really good drawer. No. Think about how you approached it. You know, how big is the nose on your snowman? Does your snowman have a top hat? Does your snowman have a scarf? You know, does your snowman have arms? Does your snowman have legs? Does your snowman have boots? Right? People have different things that, you know, and it's just a great way to remind us that we can all understand what the word snowman means, right? This is where we get into connotation versus denotation, right? Denotation is the dictionary definition. We get also snowman, right? It's a figure made out of snow. It's a thing. Not so much in Trinidad and Tobago, I guess, but definitely in Canada, right? So like, you know, you've gotten to experience the whole gamut of snowmen, right? But how we manifest that, how we engage with that image leads itself to major perspective taking. And if we don't communicate that effectively, disconnects, right? If I send you the store to get stuff for a snowman, and in my head, snowmen have top hats, and you don't come back with a top hat, I'm going to yell at you. But that's not your fault. Right? If I assume everyone knows snowmen have top hats, and you go, like, you know, so that's the thing. Like, we have to be very intentional. It's a great way to think about communicating, and then you can do the exercise again, giving explicit step-by-step instructions, right? You know, make a square, draw a triangle on top of the square, make a little rectangle on the side of the triangle. And what you find is things are much more uniform, and they're still not exactly the same because of differences in how we see the world. Monty Hall problem is another classic example of perspective taking. If you're not familiar with the Monty Hall problem, it's a famous statistical quirk, sort of an anomaly. The idea is that on the famous game show, Let's Make a Deal, Monty Hall would show you 3 doors, and they'd say, pick a door, right? And you'd pick door 1. Monty Hall would open one of the other doors. Now, the other door would always have a goat behind it, right? Because you're trying to find the car. There's 2 goats and a car. So he opens the door and there's a goat. So he says, okay, do you want to change your answer? And so people say it's a 50-50 shot. So you don't really have to change your answer. But the actual underlying math of this statistically says that you should change your answer because you have a 2/3 probability of being right if you change your answer. Now, there are lots of YouTubes on this, and I'm not really a math guy, but suffice it to say that Monty Hall's not going to show you the door where the car is, right? So you know that if you open a door with a goat, the odds are 2/3 that you're actually on the wrong door. So it behooves you to change. Now, and kids are like, okay, that's really interesting. It's cool math, but how does it have anything to do with social skills and cognitive flexibility? I'm glad you asked, universe. So the idea here is the research shows that in Monty Hall problem, 2/3 of the time, it's better to change your answer. Not 100% of the time. In social skills and cognitive flexibility, there are almost no things that work 100% of the time. But we want to maximize our chances of success. So research shows that when we are given a ambiguous social move, right? Somebody walks by us in the hall and they don't smile at us. That's ambiguous. About 70% of the time we get that wrong. because of our own feelings, because of our own stressors, because of our own biases. Now, like I said before, I'm not much of a math guy, but even I know that 2/3 and 70% are pretty darn close to each other. So it behooves us to change our answer. And the thing with Monty Hall, right, is that we're not changing our answer arbitrarily. We're changing our answer once we're presented with new information. So if you see that same person later and they smile at you, that's new information. Maybe they don't hate me. Maybe they just didn't see me earlier, or maybe they had a bad day, right? These skills all intertwine, right? Because the ability to do first thought, second thought, third thought, fourth thought intertwines with the ability to do the Monty Hall problem, because you're saying, now that I have new information, I'm showing the cognitive flexibility to change my perspective and thus change my behavior. So that's the Monty Hall problem. Like I said, there's some great YouTubes on it. I think I've linked to one of them here in the resources. So the brain bracket